Okay.
All right, perfect. So welcome everyone to our bike maintenance session. So I'm just gonna start off by introducing, because we're just working on bikes at home, you might not necessarily have all the tools you need, right? Like, if most people probably don't have a bike stand at home because, it's a big thing. It's not exactly that cheap. So what you can do while if you need to work on your bike, you can just flip it over, just like what I have here. Hopefully you can see it well. And that means that you'll be able to access stuff like your chains, your brakes, and other things, right? Also, I have here some tools. Let me flip my camera here. Nuts. Okay, never mind. So here's some tools that you might need. Here is an adjustable wrench. Um, this is a pair of needle nose pliers. This is a tire lever. You might not actually, this is for removing the tire from the wheel. You might not necessarily need this because there's a way of removing the tire from the wheel without one of these. We're not going to be going over that, but if you're interested, you can go on YouTube and look up, removing bike tire, no tools. And this is also an important one. This is a set of hex keys or hex wrenches. They're called that because they're hexagonal over here at the end. And also, I just have, some rags here and old toothbrush and a screwdriver. So these are tools that you might already have at home, or you can easily borrow from somebody. Like I said, the only bike-specific tool that you might not have is this tire lever. So with that being said, I'm gonna let Dan take over for now.
Okay. So, the idea of this workshop when we first did it was, it's springtime and you pull out the bike and just go over the three basic things to get it in shape and safe to ride. So those three things are just looking at your chain, looking at your tires, and looking at your brakes. And so with the chain, some people, there's all kinds of different bikes out there, but the chain is pretty basic. You'll have in the back, I'll take this guard off, but in the back you'll have a sprocket or a set of sprockets. In the front you may have one big chain ring or multiple chain rings, and you can switch between them. But if the chain is, if it looks a bit rusty, if it looks like it squeaks a lot, these are some basic things that you can do just to make sure that it runs smoothly, and so you don't get the gears caught up. So usually what I do is this is a chain guard. Some people have this, some people don't. It's not critical, it just keeps kind of your pant leg or whatever caught in the chain. So in this case, there's a screw at the top of the chain guard and one at the bottom. I'm just gonna move this closer. So hopefully. So this is just, a regular screwdriver. It's a regular screw. There's one at the top. Gotta do that. There's one at the bottom. You undo that. And then as Ezra mentioned, there's these hex keys. And so there's just another, this comes in a set, but they're pretty standard. So all I'll do is I'll loosen this. So sometimes I'll have like a little Tupperware container, a plastic container, yogurt container, or something, just to put the screws in so that I don't lose them. The idea is just to take this off. You may also, depending on what you have at home, but you may also want to just get a pair of gloves when you're doing this, because the chain is a place where a lot of dirt and debris gathers. So you can see, like, on the inside of here, there'll be like a whole bunch of dirt. As soon as you touch it, your hands get filthy. And so when you're looking at the chain, you want to make sure that there's a good chain tension so that it's not too loose. I'll loosen the chain so you get a sense of, sometimes the rear wheel will come forward. So as long as it's tight, then you shouldn't have an issue. If it's over tight, then it won't, the wheel won't spin freely. I'm just loosening here. So now the rear axle is a little bit loose. So it could be this case where you see there's a lot of chain slop. So you just want to, the simple thing to do is you just loosen this, you pull it back. And the trick when you're tightening the chain that I've found is very helpful, depending on your bike, you want to tighten one side with, if you're looking at the back of the bike, tighten one side with the wheel a little askew, and then you can push the wheel with one hand while you tighten the other side. And that will give you the right chain tension. And then you can check it's nice and snug, and then the chain should stiffen up. So you can adjust this a couple times until you get enough chain tension so that the wheel spins freely. So here it's not aligned quite right. So you can see them pushing on the pedal. There's rubbing against the brake. So you just need to make the adjustment again. So I've just done it finger tight there. I can back off the brake as well. So aside from chain tension, you also want to lubricate the chain. I'm going to grab a brush. So if you haven't done any chain maintenance before, there's a good chance that there'll be like a fair amount of rust buildup on it. So I usually just go to the dollar store and get one of these. This is, it come in like a pack of 3. And the bristles are made out of brass, so they're pretty soft, but they get the rust off without damaging the chain. Or this is like a bike specific one. It's one that we have for the Repair Cafe. This is just like plastic bristles, which is good at getting dirt and things off. So usually I'll just put the brush at the back here, and I'll turn the wheel and use the brush just to clean it off, or even just along here, cleaning along the chain, cleaning on the tops, the bottoms, the sides, as much as possible. If you're finding that it's really stuck on, you can use just WD-40. WD-40, a lot of people use for 2 different purposes. The WD stands for water displacement. So what it actually does is it can lubricate to some extent. It's not like an oil, but it's often used as a degreaser, which is a bit counterintuitive. A lot of people like hear a squeak, they spray this, and it reduces that noise or whatever. So if it's really filthy and covered in rust, you can just kind of take the can out and just spray all over. It makes a little bit of a mess, so you might want to put some paper down or do it outside. So you can just spray it all around, let it soak in, and then you can use the like a brass bristle brush. It's 25, 50 cents or something. You just scrub it as much as you can, get it nice and clean, and then use a rag. I use old shirts and stuff just to wipe down all of the excess. And then again, these things vary. This is just like what you'd get at the hardware store. It's a 3-in-1 multi-purpose oil. So it lubricates, cleans, and prevents rust. So this is like the cheapy option. You can get it anywhere. You can use it for a whole bunch of things around the house: locks, door handles, hinges, lawnmowers, whatever you can think of. This is something that's like bike specific. I don't know. It's got some like special wow thing to it. It's just formulated more for riding bikes, wet use, things like that. So either are great. And the idea is that when you're looking at the chain, I'll just grab a spare chain. So this is just like a piece of chain. So what's actually happening is that there's 2 plates on the outside, and there's a pin that goes through it, and there's 2 little bushings. And so what you want to see in the chain is that it moves freely like this, or as close to that as possible. So what you're trying to do is when you're getting all the rust and stuff off, you're just brushing it off. And then all of these points, sometimes you'll see the chain stick like it's straight, but there's a little hump there. So you can work it loose as much as you can. And then what you're trying to do is just put a dab of oil at each of those links. It takes a little bit of time, put on some music, just relax and just go through it. And that will make the chain really nice and fluid like this. This happens to be like for when you only have 1 gear in the back, you need to adjust the length of the chain, but when you're putting on a new chain. So that's the idea. This one's like brand new, so you can get a sense of how out of the package it looks. You don't need to get it this great, but as close as you can without going nuts and saying like, why am I spending so much time cleaning a chain? So I think that's
Dan,
the main thing. Yeah.
I got a question from asking about the brass bristle brush. Is it in the barbecue section usually, and where would you find one?
That's a good question. I think I'm trying to remember. It's either in like the kitchen or it could be barbecue. But the folks should know what this is. So you could just ask them and they'll direct you. I think I usually go to like Dollarama or something like that, and their stock is like, it's almost identical at every store I find. So it's hopefully you're not going to one store and you're asking for it and they're like, I don't know what you're asking for. So it should be okay. But again, it's not critical. Anything that you have that can do a bit of scrubbing, even like you just don't want the bristles to be too soft, because if they're really soft, then they'll rub, but they won't scrub. They won't get that the rust off. So hopefully that helps. But they're just really simple, come in a package of 3. I've just found they're really handy.
Thanks.
So I think that's the key parts. Obviously, as Ezra mentioned, we like this stand doesn't belong to me; it belongs to the Repair Cafe, and we bring it out to when we're doing events to help people with bike repairs. So usually, what I do the same as Ezra. I'll like just turn the bike over, and then while it's upside down, you can get access to the chain. And some people don't even bother going chain by chain. They just hold the lubricant here, and then they either back pedal or pedal forward. If you back pedal and you have a clutch there, then you're just like dabbing it on, and you'll just run it through. And then if you have multiple gears, shift the gears from each one so that you can walk the chain up, make sure that it's not catching on anything. And you should be in pretty good shape. So it's just a really quick, basic tune-up. I probably wouldn't spend more than 10 minutes or 15 minutes doing that, just getting it cleaned up. And then again, it seems counterintuitive when you're doing it, but once you put the oil on, you actually want to wipe off any excess, because what happens is, although it's really great and stays lubricated, once you get out onto the city streets or trails or wherever you're going, any excess oil is going to sap up dust and little debris and stuff. And so you'll have just done all this work to clean up the chain, and then immediately it'll just start grabbing debris, and it will look like totally filthy, and it will create resistance when you're pedaling. So just run the same rag or a different rag just over the chain. I'll show you usually what I do. I'll just usually grab the chain, and it's a bit easier at the bottom, but I'll just backpedal, hold the chain here, and then you'll see on the chain any excess oil. The idea is that you're not really worried about the outsides of the plates. Like when we look at the chain, the lubricant is trying to go in between the pin and the plates and the bushing. That's where you want the oil to go. And if it's all out on the outside, it doesn't help with anything. It just gathers dirt and debris. So don't be afraid to wipe it off. It uses, I think the technical term is like a capillary action, where you put a liquid here and it soaks into the pivot or the hinge or the pin or whatever it's called, linkage, sorry. So any excess, just get rid of it, because you'll kick yourself afterwards. You'll say, I spent all this time getting it clean, and then you'll be frustrated because you're constantly getting crap off your chain.
Another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can the chain tension be adjusted on multi-gear bikes in the same way? And if the chain is falling off a lot, is that because it's too loose?
That's both really good questions. With a multi-speed bike, yes. So in the back here, what you see, hopefully I can point and talk at the same time. So you can see in the back here, the axle fits through. It's not a hole, it's a slot. This part of the bike is called a dropout. And so it's designed to allow you to adjust the tension. So the more you pull back, the more chain tension you get. And sometimes there'll be like a screw or something, but the idea is that you can adjust it for the chain length, both on single speed and multi-speed bikes. Some people have, not a nut here. They may have a quick release. Fancier bikes have what's called a through axle that goes all the way through, and they'll have a different type of chain adjustment. And then the other question, Paul, just remind me of that one.
If the chain is falling off, you know how it comes off the sprocket sometimes when you're changing gears. Is that because the chain's too loose?
So I actually the reason I have a new chain on this bike is because that was happening to me. And there's generally two reasons that happens. It could be that the chain is too loose, but it also could be that you have chain wear. So if you have been, like these are consumable parts, so they won't last forever. And basically what happens is as you ride the bike longer and longer distances, the chain actually stretches, and that chain stretch causes the sprocket here and the chain not to be meshed well. And you'll be riding along and it seems to be working totally fine, and then you'll hit like a pothole or a bump in the road, and then your chain jumps off. And so this was happening to me. I was commuting to work, and it was just driving me nuts. And I tried all the different things and adjusting, and I thought, and then it only occurred to me later is that, I didn't check the basic thing to see if the chain had stretched, because I've had it for quite a while. And as soon as I checked, I saw the chain was just worn out. So there's
sorry, I'd like to add that there's also like this special tool to check if the chain has stretched. But
Yeah.
you'd only find it at like a bike shop or something like that.
Yeah, we have that tool at repair cafes. So when we're doing events, people can drop by and check. It's like a $10 or $12 part. It tells you really kind of at what percentage of wear the chain is at. So if you're having problems with the chain jumping off, that's usually one of the issues. You don't have to buy anything to go into a bike shop. You can just say, hey, my chain is jumping. I think it might be stretched. Can you check the chain length or to see if it's stretched? And it's just a simple tool. I think I can grab it here. It's in one of the toolboxes. It's just like a simple plate that it's a fixed measurement that will show you. So basically, like this is a proxy for that tool. But the way it works is, you put one end into the chain, and then there's like a pin on the other side. And if it doesn't go in, your chain is a good length. If it does go in, then it's stretched. So it's showing you the stretched position. So it should not fit in. So if someone in the bike shop is like, oh, look, it's not going in, you need a new chain. It's actually the opposite. So you don't need to buy anything when you go in. You can just ask for a bit of help, and they should be pretty good about it. Some bike shops, I've heard lots of different things over the years. I've had really different experiences. Some bike shops are really great. Some bike shops treat you like dirt, and that's really lame that they do that. I don't know why, but I don't know. Some people are just that way. So we're happy to share some names of bike shops where I've had good experiences, but I find the smaller shops where the owner is in the shop, they tend to be a bit more engaged and less kind of dismissive. When it's just kind of, I'm not trying to categorize it, just like my observation that sometimes folks are just not as welcoming, or as like they'll just sell you something but they won't help you understand why you need it or why it's helpful or anything like that. So just bear that in mind. I'll see if I can grab that tool. Maybe Ezra, do you want to?
Yes, I just have some stuff to add. So like, as Dan said, your chain can get rusty, but also over the season, you could have like, because there's oil on there, right? And you also have dirt and stuff while you're biking, so it can get in there. So probably like at least once a season, like if you're like me and you don't bike over the winter, either in the spring or in the fall, you want to clean your chain. So what I have here is just, a couple of old toothbrushes, and I stuck a rubber band on them to keep them together. And also I have some water with soap on it. So you can just, take your toothbrushes and put them and try and brush the chain. So you want to clean it, right? Like what I'm doing here. And as Dan mentioned, you can like pedal and clean it, but also you want to be cleaning the gears. Like you want to get all the mud off it, right? Which I did this in the spring, but I hope you can see that the grease and stuff has actually built up again. So maybe I might do it again soon, but yeah, who knows? Anyway, so like I said, this is just soap and water, and then you can just, so to like 2 full cranks will get you through the whole chain. So just make sure like, where you are. Just keep track like, oh, I'm starting from here. 1 crank, 2 cranks, and that's the whole chain. And like Dan mentioned, I have the same brand of bike oil he has. And then you can just do what he mentioned. So just hold it like this, and then do 2 cranks, right? And then you do, and you're slowly squeezing out the oil while you're cranking. So, okay, so That's chain maintenance. So, oh, sorry if that's making people dizzy. I'm gonna go ahead and move over to uh, tire inflation. So if you look at your tires, you're gonna see that there's
Ezra,
yeah.
oh, can I interrupt for a second?
Uh,
We lost Ezra.
Is there another question, Paul?
Oh, I was wondering about when to do the chain maintenance. Would it be a good idea to do it at the end of the season before you put your bike away?
Yeah, I think it really depends on how much you ride. So if you ride quite a bit, then feel free to do chain maintenance. Like I have my commuter bike, and I go out for a bit now and then, or in the morning at end of day. I actually ride through the winter as well, so I tend to do a bit more chain maintenance there. I try to, when I remember or have time, just wipe it off after like a rainy ride so the chain doesn't get rusty. But certainly if you're riding lower frequency, just ride once, or you can do it once at the start of the year and at the end of the year before you put it into storage, so it's not sitting over the winter without any lubricant on it. When I was first starting to ride, I think I was just doing the maintenance when I thought it needed it because I had a problem. So it was more like the chain is squeaking, or I bumped into the chain and the dirt on the chain like stained my pant leg or something like that. So those are all good reasons to stay on top of it. But if you do have the time just before you go out, for once you take it out in the spring, it's always just good to go over the whole bike and just make sure everything is in good shape so that you don't have a problem once you're out on a trail or going to work or something. That's a bit of a bummer.
oh, hey folks, I'm back. Sorry, my Wi-Fi crapped out. So yeah, um, chain. So that's the chain maintenance section. I'm just gonna go over for inflating your tires. So if you look at your tire, you're gonna see there's stuff written on the side of it. You probably can't see what's written on my tire here, but it's gonna say something like the size of the tire. Like this one, it says 26 by 1.75. So that means it's for a 26-inch wheel and the tire is 1.75 inches wide. That information is useful if you're buying a new tube, like maybe you puncture your tube. And also, it will tell you what you need to inflate your tire to. So this one, it says minimum 40, maximum 65 PSI. So if you have a pump and you can read the numbers of it, that's what you're supposed to be inflating it to. If you go too much, your tire could burst. If it's too little, it's going to be too soft and you're not going to be riding well. So yeah, I'm just going to show you. So this is the valve, and you can see I'm taking the cap off. Hopefully you can see that. This, I'm just gonna, and also I should mention that there's two different kinds of valves. One, the most common kind that you'll find here in Canada is the Schrader valve. So that's what I have right here. But now you can also find what's called the Presta valve. Um, here in Canada, you'll probably find the Schrader, but if you have a Presta, you're gonna need like a valve adjuster. I don't have one of those, but you can see on this on the end of this pump, there's two different sizes. One is for the Presta and one is for the Schrader valve. So I'm just, my tire's actually okay right now, but I'll still show you what I'm doing here. So just gonna put this on. Oh, sorry. Okay, I hope you guys can see that. And then I'm gonna pump it up. And I said, there's on the sides of your tire, you have the pressure that you should be inflating to. So mine said 40 to 65 PSI. So right now, okay, apparently I lost tire pressure while I've been riding. So you know, it's at 30. Okay, now I'm 42 PSI. So that's good enough for me. Now take this off. Okay. That is the way you, and you know, while you're riding, your tire will eventually go soft just because it happens. That's, and you can kind of tell how it is. Like after I just inflated this tire, and now the tire is is quite hard. You can easily, after a while, you'll be able to tell the difference between a tire that's underinflated and a tire that is properly inflated just by feeling it. I mean, I should warn that, you know, the pressure gauge on your typical pump isn't very accurate. So
Actually, there's a question about there's a tire inflation gauge, you know, when you push it on, it pops out. It has like a rod that pops out. And they're like a pen-sized gauge.
oh yeah.
And someone's asking how accurate they are. Do you know?
Well, they're more accurate than the one you have on your typical pump.
Oh, okay.
Well, slightly more. What would you say, Paul?
I'm not sure. I don't really know. Maybe Dan, do you have an idea which would be more accurate?
Yeah, we can do a test. I've got one of those gauges here, and I also have the digital pressure gauge, so we can find out right now.
All right. There's another question about the Presta valve. Susan's having a problem with when you take it off, it loses air. You know, when you release the pump.
Yeah.
And so is there a trick to taking the pump off?
Yes. So I'm going to do a couple things. Okay, so I probably want to add a couple things to what Ezra was mentioning, but let me answer the question first. So there's a question about Presta and Schrader. So this is the typical gate valve. This is a Schrader valve, and then this is a Presta valve. So you can see that one is, they're just a different shape a bit. And so the main difference between the two is that with a Schrader valve, you can just take the pump and put it on top, unless you have a Presta specific pump. You have to open up this, there's a little cap up here. So this is irrespective of whether or not you have a Presta specific pump. You do have to turn this little knob here, and that will allow the air to go in. So that's a valve. So if you don't have a Presta specific pump, you need something like this. It's an adapter. It just literally screws right on top. And then it gives you the shape of a Schrader valve. So that then you can inflate with any pump or a regular pump. So that's on that piece. What I found, I think someone asked the question about, they've got this Schrader valve, they're inflating, and then they're losing air. So if I'm assuming that it's just a matter of you're pumping it up, and then when you take off the pump, it kind of goes, psh, and there's a bunch of air that comes out. There's two ways, or I guess the one simple way to do it is inflate a bit beyond where you want to be. And then what I do is, like this will be, I may as well do it. Grab my pump. So this is going to be a little bit different because it's obviously not inside of a tire. So if this is, where you want to be, you give it a few extra pumps and then you release it. And with the Presto, what's nice is that you'll take off your adapter if you need one. And then you can just tap the end here and it releases a bit of air. So you go above where you want to be, and then you're just bringing it down to the right tire pressure. So I think there was another question about the accuracy of the gauges. So on my bike pump, it has like a dial here. And so you can see, it's obviously, you're not gonna be able to read it, but basically there's two rings. One is PSI and one is bar, which is just two different units of measurement for pressure. So if I were to take, I've just taken my bike tire off the bike just so I can show you guys a couple things. You don't need to take your tire off your bike to pump it up. So if I were to look at the gauge on the pump and pump this up, that's at 50 PSI. So you can see that at 50 PSI, that's within the range of there's a low end and a high end for each tire. So you can see, like, I can't, like when I press on it, I can't really depress it. So it's quite firm. So I was surprised when I started measuring pressure on my tires, how much air and how hard they become. So you don't see a lot of sag in them. It's almost like a basketball. Like you can bounce the tire. So that's one thing to keep in mind. In terms of accuracy, so this is a digital pressure gauge. So we said the gauge on the pump said 50. This comes in at 51. And this it's a bit hard to read, but it's in units. I guess that's 30. Sorry, it's in increments of 5, 10, 15. So it's reading a bit high. This is just over, it's coming in at 55. So, you just don't want to be well above the upper limit of the tire. So the idea is, depending on what you're riding, if you're riding on pavement, you want to be harder because you get better speed. If you want a bit of cushion in your ride, like if you let out a bit of air, you gain suspension, so it absorbs some of the irregularity of the road. So I'm going to let out some air here. Sorry for the loud sound. But you'll see on this tire, I'll get the pressure, and then we can go down to the lower end and then below, and you'll see that what Ezra was talking about, getting the feel of it. So this one goes down to minimum 50 PSI. So I was on the low end there. So now we're going to be dropping below, and it still feels pretty firm. And now when I press on the tire, you can see that it deforms. Well, I can see. I don't know if you can see, but you could see a lot of that deflation, or the sidewalls kind of bulge out. So you don't want to have that happening. And you'll see when you're sitting on the bike, oftentimes it looks like the sidewalls are squished down on the road. And the reason you want to avoid that, and you want to make sure you have good tire pressure, is because I'll take this tire off and I'll show you what the problem is. But basically, you get these problems called pinch flats. And pinch flats are caused when you're underinflated, and you let out a bunch of air, or it's low on air, then the tire can deform to the surface of the road or whatever you're riding on. And the rim, which is holding the tire on, you're pressing down here, the rim is here, and inside is the tube. And when the tire deforms enough and compresses, and the surface of the road pushes the tube that's inside the tire, it cuts the tire just a little bit. And then you get these really annoying flats. So it's a good idea to make sure you have enough air. So we weren't intending on showing how to change the tubes because we don't have a ton of time, but I thought it would be just helpful for people that haven't. A lot of people go to the bike shop and get tubes replaced, and it's not a very difficult repair to do. And it can be a little bit intimidating because, you know, some folks haven't just taken the time to open up the bike itself. So I'm just going to pull off this so you can see what is happening in here. So this is the rim. There's usually a rim tape that stops the spokes from hitting the tube inside, or the tube from going in there. And if the tube goes in there, it can also puncture the tube. But the tube itself, once it's seated, it just sits around the rim like this. And what I was saying about pinch flats is that when the tire, if this is the road surface and it presses down, then you can see that when it presses down, it's low inflation, then the pressure of the road against the tire will just cut. It'll create this little cut in the side of the tube, and then you can patch them, and that's what the patch repair looks like, and I can show you how to do that as well if we have time. But that's one of the main reasons that you're more efficient on the bike with the right tire pressure. But if you go really low or too low, then you can end up with pinch flats, which are really, really annoying and kind of, you know, you get stranded, and, you know, it might be happening after work when bike shops might not be open, so you don't have something handy. So is there any questions about tire inflation? I think Ezra mentioned the tire size. So you'll see, there's like, I don't know why the bike industry decided to do it. There's nothing more confusing than trying to figure out what the size of your tire is. But it's printed on the side, and you probably won't be able to see this, but there's two basic wheel sizes. One is, so that's the diameter of the wheel. There's 700 and 650. And those are two, the 650 is like the 26-inch. It's a smaller. The idea is that this rim is smaller, so you can get a bigger tire on. So mountain bikes tend to have a smaller rim with a bigger tire, so they get more suspension, it's cushier. Road bikes have a larger rim
and a smaller tire because they don't need to absorb as much shock. So when you're looking at it, it's like, takes forever to figure it out because it's called a 700, but if you actually measure it and it's also printed on the tire, it comes in at 622, which is the technical measurement of the tire. So if you're in a bike shop and you say, I need a tube, you can check on the side. And this one tells me that it's 700 by 35. And 35 is the width of the tire in millimeters. So if you measure from here to here, that dimension is 35. The smaller ones are like 22s or things like that. And so there's a couple of tubes can inflate. And so they do a range of sizes. So it's not like if you have a 35 and you use a tube that goes up to 30, you could probably get away with it. So there's flexibility around it, but just try to get as close as possible. I think that's largely it on tires. So if you don't have a pump or a gauge, don't sweat it. Just inflate until it's firm, but not rock solid. So you want to be able to, if you're trying to put a bit of pressure on it, then you just don't want it to like do a lot of compression. So that's going to be not enough. And so if it feels firm, then you're probably pretty good.
Ben, I think I saw a question about how often somebody would need to reinflate their tire.
Also a really good question. As often as you are able, I would say. So if you have a pump at home, it only takes a couple quick seconds to put air in the tire. And, some people put in air once a week. Some people are really scrupulous. They put it in every ride. But because as Ezra mentioned, like air will come out of the tire naturally. So, if you're I would say if you're just commuting and it's a pretty typical ride, you're going to the grocery store, you don't need to get the pump out. If you're going to go out for like a nice recreational ride, friends or family, maybe you're going to go to the Don Valley or some other rec trail, I would just take a couple secs, grab the pump, make sure that you've got enough air in there, because you don't want to get out to your destination and then find out that you're underinflated and it's not a great ride. So or if you have really not sufficient air and you end up with a pinch flat, then it's really going to hamper your plans.
Yeah, and I just want to add, like, before you ride out, just for anything, even if you're commuting, just tire. Like, if it feels soft, what can also happen is that you might have a very, very slow leak. Like this happened to me. Like I would bike to work, and then when I was biking home, it was completely flat. So what happened was there was a very, very small hole that would slowly leak over time, like while I was at work, and it was a real pain to find that hole. So yeah, just feel your tire just before you ride out. And obviously if it's flat, try and do it before you ride out, or just find another way of getting to where you need to go if you're on a schedule.
Yeah, I guess if we're okay for time, Paul, I could probably just show folks how to do a tire swap a tube out.
Yeah, we have an hour, so it's 11 o'clock almost.
Oh, okay.
Wait,
so hang on a second. Don't we need to do brakes as well? Brake maintenance?
Yeah, I think I was gonna just do some pretty basic stuff on brakes because looking for wear and those indicators. So I think I get a sense often that people that aren't comfortable with doing a tire swap, either because they just haven't seen anyone do it, and they tend to go to a bike shop, and then you're kind of paying $10 for a tube, and then like another, I don't know, $6, $7, $8 for someone to swap out the tube. When you actually see that it's relatively straightforward, people tend to say, well, I could probably do that. And so I'm just going to show it quickly. So once you have the tire off of the bike, there's three parts, right? There's the rim, there's the tube that goes inside, and there's a tire. So on the tire itself, it matters less for the front wheel, but there is a direction to tires generally, unless there's no tread on them. And you just need to look around the tire, and it'll say rotation or drive in an arrow that points that way. So you just need to imagine, okay, if the sprocket is here and the wheel is going to turn this way, you orient the tire in that fashion. And then what I found the easiest way to do it to date is, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get half the tire on. So when I say half the tire, I mean that there's two sides. There's a wire bead that goes along the inside of the tire. So I'm just going to try and get this half inside the rim. And so I just slip that on, start from one side, and I'm just slipping this on as best as I can. And depending on the size of your rim and the size of the tire, sometimes it's really, really easy. And sometimes you need like one of those tools that Ezra had as a tire lever. And so once you have one side on and one side off, then what I tend to do is I'll either repair the tube that I have with a patch kit, or I'll get a new tube, and I'll take the tube out. And when you take the tube out of the package, it's like super flat. So I found it's really helpful to just put a little bit of air in. You're not talking about like super inflated, just a wee bit of air so it has a shape. And the next thing I'll do is I'll take the valve, and I'll find the hole in the bike. So I'm just dropping it into the hole here, and I'm making sure that it's pulled down all the way. And then the next part is I'm going to pull that half that's, I'm going to kind of, it's like stuffing you're stuffing the tube into the open part of the tire. So it's overhanging like this, and you're just tucking it in. And so when you see it in profile, it's not in line with the rim, it's hanging over, and you're just tucking it in as you go along. And so you're halfway there. Want to make sure it doesn't get twisted or anything. So now the tube is inside of the tire itself, and this half of the tire is outside of the rim. And so the next step is just to pull the tire onto the rim. So you pull this over, and you work your way around. So this is when, depending on tire size, this one happens to be a really easy fit, so I can just do it by hand. But if you do need to use the tools, then the trick is don't use anything metal, because when you're trying to stuff the tire into the rim, then you can pinch the tube. So if you use plastic, it's less likely to cause a problem there. And then once you have it on, then just again, pull down this, make sure it's, pull down the valve, make sure that it's seated well. Grab your pump, lock that on, and just inflate. And I usually do this as 2 steps. So I'll inflate it just a little bit so that that wire bead seats itself in the rim. And then I'll just check that it's in there properly. So what I'll do is I'll just pull back on the tire and you might hear a pop or get a bit of movement, and that's just the bead seating itself in the rim. So you can do that, turn it around, do the same. Usually it finds itself really very easily, so it's not a big deal. And you can see, or I can feel that I could pull up a little bit here. If you don't do this step, that's fine. As you pump, the idea is that the pressure in the tire will seat the pressure in the tube will seat the tire. And this is, again, below the 50 PSI, so I can press down on it quite easily. So I'm gonna come back, and either with the gauge or not, just get it up to the right tire pressure. And pop that up, and then that should be good. So it's nice and firm, full of air. So just so you know, the higher pressure you go, then the more of the road you're going to feel. So if you get better efficiency or speed, but if you don't like that feel, you can let out a bit of pressure, go to the midpoint of the tire, or even at the bottom end of the tire, not too close, but towards the bottom end, and you'll get a bit more cushion in the ride. I think
Yeah, and I just want to add, if you don't have a tire lever, and you want to get the tire off, you could try using something blunt, like maybe a spoon or something. The thing is, you don't want to puncture your tube or your tire.
Yeah, which I've done many times. So I've learned my lesson enough. Did you want to go to brakes maybe, Ezra? Or is there any questions about tires, inflation, stuff like that?
No, actually, you can cover the brakes. I'll just chime in if I have anything to add.
Okay.
There's a question about creaking when pedaling the bike, and I think maybe we could deal with that after you do the brakes.
Right. Maybe I'll leave this. Yeah, I guess so brakes are, they're not trickier, but I keep getting all the sun in my eyes. So I'm gonna try and move back a bit. So brakes, there's different types. And so I'll try and be like really general about it rather than super specific. It looks like I need to plug in my computer, so give me a sec.
Well, maybe I can try and answer. If it's squeaking, like, I'm not sure if he means like if it's squeaking. If it's squeaking while you're pedaling, that probably means you need to oil your chain again. I mean, that happened to me. That used to happen to me a lot. I didn't realize it was because my chain wasn't oiled.
Yeah, it's when he's pedaling, when they're pedaling.
When they're pedaling, yeah. I mean, to me, that's what it sounds like.
So you think it's a chain needs oiling?
Yes, that's what I would try.
Yeah, you can, the idea with when you're doing bike repairs, you want to kind of isolate the potential issues. So if you can turn the bike over and just spin the wheel, don't pedal. And if it's squeaking, then it might not have to do with the chain. It might have to do with maybe there's something rubbing against the tire. And so you try to look for that sound and find the sound and deal with it there. And then you can try pedaling. And if it squeaks when it's pedaling, you can see if the squeaking is intermittent or if it's constant. And then you can kind of narrow down the possibilities of what the problem might be. But typically squeaking will be attributed to chain or chain rub or just lack of a lubricant on the chain. Okay, so there's different types of brakes. I forget all the name of all the different types. So this is a style of brake which basically, I'm going to try and move the camera a bit. So this is just a style. They all kind of work on a similar principle. Whereas you have your brake handle here at the handlebars, and there's a lever. And on one end of the lever, there's like a lug, and it's basically a long wire that's inside of the housing. And you can see the wire out here. And basically what happens is when you pull this lever at the handlebar, it's drawing the cable up through the housing. And when it does that, it pulls the brakes in together. So the key things to look for when you're getting ready for the season is making sure that the brakes aren't rubbing against the rim, and that you actually have enough brake pad on the brake pad itself. Like there's a part that wears and there's the backup. So if the pad that wears is enough of it's gone, then it won't grab the rim, and you can, if it's too worn out, it may damage your rim. So I'm just going to take this brake pad off so you can see how to tell if there is enough material left for braking to happen. So, so you can see that there's kind of these three grooves on the brake pad, and there's there's a right and left brake pad. This one has an L on it. It tells you which way is forward, which way is back. So you configure the pad in the right direction when you're doing that, and you'll see that there's a bunch of debris here. So this part with the branding and the manufacturer's text, this is the backup part. This is what holds the brake. And then this part here, this section here is the part that wears. And so the simple way to tell if you have enough brake material left is you're looking at these grooves, and if there's very little of this left, then it will be close to the backup part. So these are relatively new. So you'll see that it just starts wearing, and actually this one actually written on it, it says wear line. So you can see that, and that's just telling you that you've worn this brake pad out and it's time to replace it. And the replacement, as long as you don't tinker too much with the brake itself, it's as simple as just, there's usually just one screw and a washer and the brake, and you're just gonna put the two of them together and tighten it in the hole. And then what you're gonna do is just adjust it relative in the height, because on the bike itself, you'll see that it's a slot. So like in the back of the bike, the intention of these slots is to allow for adjustability. So you can take this brake and depending on the size of your rim, you can move it up and down and then tighten it, tilt it. So you have a lot of flexibility of getting the alignment right. And the idea in terms of where you want it to sit, so when you have the tire out, like the idea is you want it to sit on the rim. Sorry. So you want it to sit on the rim, and if it's a bit too high, then the top of the brake will rub against the tire itself. And if it's too low, it won't grab the tire evenly. So you just kind of want to get that sweet spot. So it takes a little bit of adjustment, but you should be able to get it where you need it to be. So one other thing that's really helpful to do, depending on the brake style you have, you can loosen this cable, and that will give some slack. And then you can put a little bit of that same lubricant that you put on your chain inside of this housing. So I can show you how to do that as well. Now I've loosened where the cable was grabbing the tire. And at the top of the handle here, you want to just loosen off the components as much as you can. Don't know if I can show this in an easy way. So typically, it sits in there like that. Now that I've loosened things off, then I can actually get this housing, pull this housing out. And then there, you'll see there's the cable and the housing. You can just put a little bit of lubricant in there and then work it back and forth, and that will give you a bit of a smoother braking action. That's not a, you don't have to do that step. It's just a nice thing. If you happen to be changing things over, you kind of may as well do it if you can, but not critical. So I don't know if some comments about, there were some questions about brakes and stuff. So I'm not sure if I touched on people's questions, but we can look at other brake
actually,
types
I just
too.
want to add, like, when it comes to brake pads, to get hard and cracked. And when they're hard like that, they're not gonna be able to catch your rim that easily. So it's not gonna be as efficient a brake as it should be. So when they get to that point, you need to either go into a bike shop and get them to change out your brake pads, or to do it yourself at home. Oh, and I think there was a question about moving the brake lever.
Yeah. If it's too, Carlos's son's hand isn't as big as the gap between the lever and the handle.
Sorry, I was on mute. I'll grab a kid's bike and I'll show you what to do there.
Yeah, usually it's not that hard to move the lever. I mean, you just have to loosen certain things. And that's when you need your hex key, your hex wrench, because that's usually what it looks like.
So this is an example. So if you grab a set of hex keys, I think this is the right size. But basically, Hopefully you can see that. But so this is the hinge that the lever hinges upon. And on kids' bikes, they have this adjustability. On adult bikes, I think to lesser extent. But there, you'll see there's a set screw here. It's a little screw. You need a pretty small Allen key to go in there, or a hex key. And all you're doing here is you can screw this in further, which basically pushes the lever out. So it gets closer and closer to the handle, which you can continue to do. You just need to be mindful that if you go really, really tight, or if you bring it really, really close, there's two things you want to avoid. One is if you bring it really close, then there's not a lot of travel for the brake to the handle, and you don't want them to collide, because if they collide and it's you're not getting the most amount of braking power. So you want to make sure there's enough room that when you pull on it really tight, if you want to stop, that this doesn't touch the handlebar. And as you adjust this, if you're having some resistance, you may need to also loosen the cable here to give you more slack, because it's as though you want to reset the distance of the brake pads to the rim once you get the right reach. So you're going to need whoever you're sizing it for to be around to see that they can actually get a couple fingers onto the brake. But it's really as simple as adjusting this set screw so that they can reach it, and then just resetting the brakes down here. So you just loosen off the screw, you bring the brake pads in relatively close to the tire, but not touching, and then you tighten that bolt there, and that should do it.
And actually, there's a question about how to tighten the brakes. Maybe you can show that as well.
Tighten as in when you go to brake, you don't feel a lot of braking power.
Yeah, I think when you...
They're talking about tightening the cable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so as I showed a bit earlier, as the brake pad wears down, you want to adjust the length of the cable, essentially. So the simplest way is at the handlebar on most bikes. This is an inline adjuster, and so when you first get the brakes fitted up, you want this snug. But as the brake pad wears down, there's more room for the brake to travel. So you want to pick up the slack in the cable, and all you do is you turn this out. So there's two parts to it. You turn out the whole thing, and then there's an inner piece that you can use to tighten down against the brake pad itself, and that will reduce the amount of travel. If these are designed to kind of pick up the wear as it wears down, and to make fine-tuned adjustments. But if it's still, you've played with this and you're still not getting it quite right, then I would suggest, backing this all the way off, like resetting this position, opening up the cable, depending on the style. You can loosen the cable here or open this bolt, and then set the brakes to where you want them to be, and then pull the cable snug and tighten the bolt there. And just saw another question about that.
Yeah. Jeff there said his daughter's bike fell over and the front brake is locked. So the hand gear is not engaged. I'm not sure what that means. It means when you squeeze it, nothing's happening, maybe?
I probably have to take a look at it, but my guess would be that if the handle got distorted, it may just be jammed. So you have to make sure that each of the parts can move freely. So I would probably undo the, so right, he's saying when they squeeze, the cable moves, but the brake pads don't. So that's probably something down here. So I would undo the bolt. Sorry, I'm pointing at something you can't see. The problem is probably in the lever arms, and they're bolted to pins on the frame of the bike. So what you're going to want to do is undo this, take the cable out, and depending on the type of bike, sometimes you can get away with it. So you want to take that out, and you want to see that this arm moves freely and that this arm moves freely. If these are jammed, then you found your problem. And what you'll need to do is undo this bolt and clean things up, make sure that nothing's bent or out of shape, and then put a little bit of lubricant. If you only have oil, that's fine. If you have a little dab of grease, that'll do it inside of that pin and mount it back up. And you just want to make sure it's moving freely. It's very common for these things to get stuck. And so, you know, you're pulling on the cable and it should be moving, but one of the arms is stuck and only one of the levers is moving. So this one is fine, or this one is in a fixed position and this one can move a bit. So you get uneven braking and it doesn't feel as powerful. So hopefully that helps with that problem.
Another question about, you know, the brake cable is slipping out of the handle where you loosen, you know, you were tightening or loosening it. Yeah.
Up here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what happens there, I'll grab a brake cable.
Yeah, like Dan was mentioning, there's like at least 3 different kinds of brakes. So when you want to loosen them, like this one I have, you just basically have to squeeze them together and then they come out. But anyway, sorry. Back to Dan.
So that question about the cable slipping out. So this is just a brake cable, and inside the lever, there's like a hole that this fits into. So I'm not sure if you can see it. I'm gonna try and set it up. You can see it. But the cable, hopefully this doesn't fall down on me, but this cable, when you're putting it in, this lug, this end piece, sits inside here. So, so what sometimes happens is, and usually you'll notice it like after you've had like a near miss, like you're riding down and a car pulls out in front of you and you like just grab the brakes with your life. So sometimes what will happen is this is like either, I don't know, a piece of cast aluminum or something like that. So it can wear and it can start to slip. And I've had it happen that I've had a real close encounter with the car and grabbed on the brakes and actually tore the cable right out of this lug. So you have to replace the brake cable, but that could explain maybe why you're getting a bit of slop or not that powerful braking power, or if it feels like the cable is being pulled out of the handle.
Another question Bernard has about cleaning the brakes on a coaster bike. Coaster brakes, how frequently do you have to clean them?
The coaster brake I'm not as familiar with because it's been quite a while since I've had to work on one. I think more it's like you can do the preventative work on the brakes, but from what I recall, it's all encapsulated. So it gets less wear than you do with other brakes that are externally mounted. So that one I'd have to look up and get a better sense of what the best way to tackle that one is. But I think it's the reverse pedaling, and you will get wear, but I think it's not as extensive as when they're externally mounted. Because part of the wear is that you have a lot of debris and stuff on the road that's coming up on the rims, and it's wearing down the rubber on the brakes. I don't know if there's anything specific that people wanted to see, or if there's other questions.
If there's no more questions, over, like, you know, some of the, oh wait, there's a question. How tight should the cable be?
So the idea with the cable is that, like, this bike is actually really good for doing cable maintenance, because I think this type is called a V-brake. But basically, you can see I can quickly get the brake cable on and off. On the other bike that I was showing you earlier, it's a bit of a pain. So depending on the one you have, maintenance is easier to do than others. But in terms of how tight it should be, it's really about, there's some personal preference. Like, some people like to be able to grab the brake, and as soon as they pull at all, they want to feel engagement. They want to feel the braking power right away. Other people, they're more comfortable with a bit of movement on the brake cable before it engages. So there's flexibility in that end. The main thing that you want to do is that you don't want to allow the handle to bottom out on the handle, or the lever to bottom out on the handlebar. So if it's really, really loose, you lose braking power, because if you pull all the way and there's a gap, it means that's the maximum braking power that you can output on the bike. So that's locking out the front or rear tire, whatever it is. If the lever hits the handlebar, then you're not getting the full braking power on the bike, and you want to avoid that. So in a roundabout way of answering the question, you want to be loose enough so the brakes are not touching the wheel or the rim at any time, but not leave enough room for travel in the handle that it doesn't bottom out here. So that you have some finesse. And if you're tinkering with it so much that you can't really get it exactly where you want, just remember that you can use this for the gross adjustment, like the large movements, and then you can fine tune it here if you're having trouble getting it dialed in. Because the idea is that you want to hold the brakes where it makes sense. Like, sometimes I'll just hold them up against the tire. I'll start to tighten down this bolt, and then when it's not really locked down, I just release it a little bit, and the cable slips back, and then I'll tighten it. And that gives it enough room to just sit off of the rim, and you need to finesse it a little bit to get into a sweet spot, I find. This is, by the way, why I was saying you might want to wear gloves, or I don't know, you can put like creams and stuff on your hand, but it gets really dirty. There's a question about disc brakes.
And I think I saw a question about derailleurs.
Disc brakes, I do have a bike with disc brakes. They're not any more complicated to change. It's just a few more steps, and I'm not sure that I have the time to go through it. But basically, there's actually some good resources that we should probably talk about in case you're trying to do repairs. One of the big bike tool manufacturers is called Park Tool, and they have actually a YouTube channel with a ton of great videos. They're really short, they're like a couple minutes long, and they go through various different parts. They're often trying to sell you on a tool, like, oh, they're demoing the tool that they want to sell, but you can disregard that part and just focus on how to do the repair, and it will show you how to do it. The disc brakes, depending on the type, there's either like, you have to take the disc brake off, and it's depending on the pads that you have to match the type of pad. So it's either held in place by a pin or by a screw. And you take those out, you pop out the disc brakes, you put in the new pads, and you set the pin again. And then there's a little bit of an adjustment thing that needs to happen. It's the same idea as the caliper brakes or the V brakes. You have the rotor, which is what you're grabbing, and you just need to reset the mechanism, because they also wear, and you can adjust them so that the one brake pad is really wide, and as they wear, you fine tune it and bring the brake pad in closer and closer. So most of the disc brakes that I've seen are the mechanical type with a cable. There's other ones with hydraulic, but in both cases, it's a similar type of thing that you're just looking to adjust how close and how far away those brake pads are once they're in there. So I'm not sure if that fully answers that person's question. I'm not sure that I can demo that one.
That's good. I think there was a question about derailleurs, like how to tell when they need maintenance or something like that. Paul, can you read that out to us? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying, I opened the chat. So there's a question about how do you know if the brakes are working well? I think, once you have it set up, take it for, like, find a laneway or somewhere, park or something near your home or wherever you're doing the work, and just see how the brakes feel. If they feel really sloppy, like you go to brake and you have a lot of movement or a lot of travel in the lever, but you're not getting a lot of braking power, then you're probably going to want to make an adjustment. I find most people like to feel the braking power pretty early. They don't want to pull on the levers a lot and only at the end start to feel the bike to slow down, so that you can, so it's really just about finding how you can bring the brake pads closer to the rim without touching. That's kind of the way that I think about it, is get it as close as possible without touching, and then you should be in a good spot for the brake pads.
Yeah, what was suggested to me is like the lever should be fully engaged 2 finger widths away from the handle. But I don't know. Yeah, it definitely depends on what you like how much pressure you want it to be able to bring to bear on your brakes. Dan, could you show us the question about the derailleurs? Like basic derailleur maintenance, I guess.
Yeah, the rear
can you see that in the chat?
Yeah, so the rear derailleur, for people that don't know the name of the bike parts, is back here.
Oh yeah, I guess we should mention the derailleur is the part of the bike that changes the gears.
So let me see if I can get it up to closer to the camera. So this component, there's 2 cogs and this mechanism, and its job is to, as you rotate the shifter at your handlebar, it moves the chain from one sprocket to the next. So with the rear derailleur, the modern derailleurs have a derailleur hanger here, which can sometimes get bent, and they're replaceable. because you want it to be nice and straight. And then the rest of the derailleur, there's kind of two simple parts to it. It's basically a spring in tension through the cable. So as you shift, it's basically the cable is pulling it in one direction against the spring. And when you release the cable, it springs back into a regular position. And so there's two screws that limit how, so it doesn't go off the top sprocket and the bottom sprocket. Those are two set screws that are here that limit the travel of the derailleur. And then there's the cable itself that goes up to your handlebars, and that's controlling where the derailleur sits and shifts from one to the other. So the key thing is just to make sure that when you're looking at it from the back of the bike, that the derailleur is, this component, derailleur, is aligned with the sprockets. If it's off a little bit, then your chain will jump from sprocket to sprocket, which can be really annoying. I'm not sure if that answered the question. So if you have a follow-up to that, then feel free to put it in the chat. Oh yeah, so if you get chain oil on your disc brakes, you want to degrease the rotor. So that's the big disc that's mounted to the hub. And so you can use some kind of degreasing agent. You want to try and keep oils off of the rotor as much as possible. Sometimes if you get it before it goes into you could try dish soap. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. You can try something more aggressive. But the idea is you want to get it nice and clean and dry so that it doesn't go into the brake pads, because then you'll lose the braking power. Okay, it looks like some people are signing off. I don't know if there's anybody else that has any questions that are lingering. We were actually at Repair Cafe. Just before the pandemic hit, we were really keen to start up with bike maintenance for this year, and we got a whole bunch of new tools, and we're kind of really excited to launch that. So we're working on ways to get back up and running again, but this is just one of the things that we're trying to do so people have a sense of, we can still connect and do repairs, and we'll try and kind of, I don't know, we'll see what requests come in and what else we can work on. If it's more bike stuff, we'll figure out how to do that. And if it's other types of common repairs, we'll maybe look for those opportunities too. But it's really great to see so many people turning out. Hopefully.
Before we go, I just want to just go over, because probably, people don't have a bike stand at home, or they don't have all these tools, like the right size of wrenches or so on. Around the city, there's several different do-it-yourself places. So what that means is you go there and you'll have a mechanic or a volunteer who will help you do repairs. So if you need any parts, you can buy the parts there, either new or used. One place that I've used before, it's called Bike Chain. It's at U of T. You don't need to be a student to go there. But yeah, they're pretty good about it. And also there's a place called Bike Sauce. That's on Girard and Broadview, I believe. Hopefully we can share these links with you in the chat, or they can be emailed to you afterwards. There's also a place at Evergreen Brickworks. They're only open on Sundays. I'm not certain if they're operating during this whole pandemic lockdown. I sent them an email, but they never got back to me. Also, if you're near York University, they have a place called Regenesis or Cycle York, and they're there. I think they're there on Wednesdays. Also in Scarborough, there's a place called Scarborough Cycles. I'm not exactly sure where it is, but yeah, and I looked at their website. It seems like they're operating. And if you're in my neighborhood, the Jane Finch area, there's a bike hub at Tobermory. And I actually volunteer there, but I haven't gone there yet since the whole lockdown. They're open on Wednesdays, 3:30 to 6:30, and also on Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. You'll need to check out their websites or call them to find out, when these places are open. And if you need more information, you can look online. There's, east of the city, I mentioned that there's one called Scarborough Cycles. You'll need to look them up. Hopefully we can send you their website. And also, if you want to find out more information online, there was a man named Sheldon Brown. He had a website with a lot of technical information on bicycles. I mean, he died in like 2000 something, but his friends and associates, I don't know anywhere near Pickering. Maybe if somebody knows someone, they could drop it in the chat. I just know the places that are in Toronto. Anyway, like I was saying, Sheldon Brown has a website that has a lot of technical information on bicycles. And you can go there and look it up. And also, I forgot to mention, Bike Sauce has a couple of videos on their website. And also, just going on YouTube and looking up this information, like, how to change a tire, how to do this, how to do that. There's a lot of videos on that with that kind of stuff. Are there any more questions?
All right, if there's no more questions, I think we'll end it there. As Ezra mentioned, we have all these links. I think Julia from Stonegate will send them out to you or post them. And maybe we'll put them on our Facebook page too. So if you have any questions, you can either talk to Julia or you can actually contact us at repaircafetoronto.ca or info@repaircafetoronto.ca or check out our website. So thank you everybody for coming, and thank you Dan and Ezra for giving us a lot of useful information. It's been great. All right.
Bye everyone.
Bye,
Ride safe.
Bye, everybody.